Yeah, I'm excited that so many of you are joining us again, and maybe some of you are new. Like last time, it will be amazing that unless you're speaking, that you mute yourself. And also, those of you who are comfortable with it, it'd be fantastic if you turn on your camera so we can see your faces and kind of see who's in the room. Obviously, if you don't feel comfortable with that for any reason, that's also okay, but it's just nice if we see some of the people here, it makes it a little bit more personal. I'm Bika, and I'm an architect here in Berlin, and I'm joined today by Jolene, Malte, Martina, Shalini, Josh, Nathan, Chiara, and Fanny. And Jochen is not joining the assembly, but he's also been working with us over the past couple of weeks on the content. And so, yeah, I think last time we were trying to really kind of get to understand the problem with the brief really well. And for those of you who have missed the last session and want to rewatch it, it's on YouTube. Maybe somebody can post the link. Because we had a really fantastic presentation by the group 100% Tempelhof, who were kind of explaining about the background of Tempelhof and why it's so important to protect it. And this time, now that we have established, I would say that it's important to protect it, we're really thinking about how we can work together. And essentially, we're considering everyone who's on this call to be part of the team already, in some sense. So we invite you really to come along, to workshop with us, and to think through these problems. Last time I said we don't have answers. Now we have some more specific ideas about what are some different strategies. And we still think there's actually a range of different formats of how people can contribute and what role you can play. And this is exactly what it's going to be about. As well, we're working on an open letter. And that's very important because that's kind of a way to communicate with government, and we don't have it finished yet, but it's in the pipeline, almost ready to go. So please watch your email inbox for that open letter when it comes in, and sign it and share it with your friends. That's super important, and has kind of also history in Berlin and in Germany to have be pretty effective in this type of process, because also the number of people who sign and the people who sign, it kind of gives the whole thing a bit more weight. And so that's, we'll talk a little bit about that too. And then we'll give you again a little bit of input, this time from our group. We're calling it the Competition Orientation Guide. So we'll take you through some essential information for those of you who are considering to participate in any way. And again, that's not necessarily taking part in a competition. It could be, but yeah, basically giving you, that's kind of like an overview of things that you might want to consider. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about how we work on this project as a group, framing our collaboration. And then we'll go into sort of breakout rooms and brainstorm around specific strategies. So you can kind of think already a little bit ahead, what kind of, am I in a group of who wants to take part in a competition? Am I licensed and so on? Or people who want to contribute in other ways. So I think that's going to be a bit the section where you are asked to really debate and contribute. When we come back to that, there's going to be a short summary. And finally, we'll be talking about next steps, assembly number 3, and how we plan to continue this work. Importantly today, the answers have come out for basically the queries that have been submitted to the competition organizers. And we have noticed that they've chosen not to answer all the questions. So they only chose to answer the questions where specific sections of the competitions were being asked about. And so a lot of it is kind of left out, and a lot of the answers are, one could say, quite vague. One important point is that the competition is international, but only to a specific degree. So EU is allowed, but then also outside of the EU, only specific countries like the US, UK, Japan are allowed to enter. So if you are from a country that's not eligible to enter, but are interested in participating, we also want to be kind of a platform for that. And you can matchmake with other people who and potentially collaborate and work with them on an entry who are eligible to enter, because we feel that that's quite a restrictive specific geographic region that's being asked to enter, and obviously not truly international in that sense. So please reach out, or you can also post in the chat and basically describe what you do and how maybe you kind of want to matchmake with somebody who is eligible to enter. Yeah, and so with that, before we go into kind of the orientation guide that will be presented by my colleagues here, I want to ask again, we asked that last time, but I want to ask what the professional background is of people. And we have a little poll here, and we added one question here, which is here, professional background. How many of you are licensed? Because that is a prerequisite to join the competition. Oh, wow, so many licensed people. Okay. This is, okay, there's also some people who are, it's now getting more mixed. But yeah, this is actually an important information for us to know, because in a way that limits the number of people, the number of entries, not the number of people who can actually work on it. So again, if you are not licensed, no matter where you live, you could also try to matchmake with somebody who is licensed to work on something together. So that's also the purpose of this poll. And again, feel free to use the chat also for this purpose. With that, I actually hand over to...
1 second.
Oh, yeah.
You have to also share the results as, I mean, now 70 out of 78 people have voted, and I think we need to end poll so that everybody can also see the results.
Oh, yeah, I was going to let it run for like 1 more minute, but I think...
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Here we go. All right, so now I think everyone can see it while it's running too, right? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So now we see 24 licensed people in this room, 31 non-licensed architects, a couple of researchers, students, 2 activists, and some other professions. Amazing. What a group. All right, with that information, I'll hand over to, I think Martina is speaking first. Is that correct?
It's me.
Oh, sorry, it's Josh.
Yeah,
okay.
we switch things around.
Words to Josh.
Josh, I'm gonna start sharing now. Josh?
Yes, go ahead and share.
Okay.
I'm just waiting for that. All right, so this is our introduction to our competition orientation guide. We're going to give a little presentation here, but we're also sharing some resources that we've collected, like documents that we've just collected and translated, and a Miro board where we started to kind of make some flow charts and highlight the most important information, because we want to help you save time in this accelerated competition timeline and all get on the same page. So in this little introduction, this presentation today, we're gonna highlight some of the contradictions that we've seen in the competition documents. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. So one thing we just wanted to make everyone aware of, there's going to be a final dialogue workshop in July after all this is closed. So there's sort of 3 phases. There was the previous dialogue workshops in September, and from now until June, there's 2 phases of the competition. And then again, there's a dialogue workshop. And one way of looking at this is what the Senat is trying to do is for each of these stages, they're trying to set up a group of people in Berlin who are going to be posed against the Volksentscheid, the referendum that was in 2014 saying that majority of Berliners don't want to build on the field. So in the first dialogue workshop, that was 250 people who were selected randomly, resoundingly said, no, we don't want to build on the field. Second phase, there's a design competition for architects. And what that means is that the city is basically trying to instrumentalize us and say that, we're going to step into this role and we are now going to act against the 2014 referendum. So yeah, it's actually our job not to do that. So you can go to the next slide. This is this area between the two red lines where the city wants to build. And I think we're going to one more slide. There's one really important point in the city's documentation of the dialogue workshops. They basically list out all of the results of the dialogue workshops where they have all of these different suggestions, but in the actual Ausschreibung, they don't list how many votes each of these recommendations got. So everybody sort of already knows this, but we just want to underscore that the votes for no building was 39 points, which I think is over twice as much for the next idea. So this is just one example of how the Senat is kind of selectively using and concealing information in this document. Next slide, I think Martina's gonna continue to talk about some other salient points.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, we can go ahead to the next slide. So now we are talking about the space of architects, so the idea competitions. As explained before by my colleague, the architecture competition is framed in this big and long process, which is called the dialogue Werkstatt, and it's composed by 3 phases. Before some citizens has been called to discuss on the future of Tempelhofer Feld, and these results that my colleague has briefly shown in one big intention, so not building, have been transferred into the competitions Ausschreibung and Auslobung. What we highlight is in the narrative of these architectural competitions that there are many contradictions. Previously with the dialogue Werkstatt phase 2, so the ones in which we have the opinion from the citizens, and second but not less important, with the current legislations. So we would like to give you some points and highlight some topic that make you aware to create a self-conscious on this problem. So let's first go through the content of the Auslobung, and then we will see some points that actually they are not actually matching very well the narrative of this big structure. So first question, what is the aim of architectural competitions? It's a concept competitions on which the architects are called upon to give new perspectives and developing strategies for the Tempelhofer Feld, in the way that it's pointed out that the Tempelhof cultural values and ecological value has to be preserved, but in the way that also building and build-up area can be inserted in the development of the peripheral boundaries of the areas itself. This is boosted and supported by the reason that Berlin is experiencing a very long and huge house crisis, and so Tempelhofer Feld can be a suitable area to provide a new district for the constructions of these new houses. On this point, we have some doubts on. We can keep by going to this next slide. Okay, so as I shown before, the competitions area is divided in two sub-areas. We have the outer area, which is the outer boundaries of the field in which you can actually build, and in which architects are called upon to design in terms of master plan a new district. The central area is an area which is more aimed to be preserved as a public spaces. The functions listed in the Auslobung are referring to all the 8 items and categories that can feed a residential district, or better, a mixed-use district. So we have residential buildings, commercial buildings, manufacturing, and social activities, and all the amenities that are necessary to support the development of the field in terms of future new districts of Berlin. As well, it's important to include all the infrastructures that are needed to support a new load of users within this new constructed area. If we switch it to the next slide, we can see what is requested for the central area, which actually left more for the public usage. So in this area, there are more landscape interventions, and it's also okay to keep the area as it is in the way that the architects can preserve the spontaneous growth of the field itself. But by listing all of this point, if we can switch to the next slide. Our question is all the requests listed in the Auslobung feasible? Is it really possible to build over the field, and why these questions and topic are arising? So maybe there's something in the back that can allow this process. If we go further, we create a kind of mind map. If we can switch the slide, please. In which we highlight what is the positions of the architects in this big dialogue process, and which are the responsibilities of the architects in the outcomes of this dialogue process, and which consequence have the forces of architects into the changing of legislations. Let's go back to the previous questions. Is it actually possible to build over the field? The answer is yes and no. So no, because there's the Tempelhofer Gesetz in this moment. So the Temple of Law, which has the highest value of preserving the field itself, is the biggest and the most important law that actually forbid entirely the constructions of the field, as well the Denkmalschutz. Then after that, we have many other sub-layers that actually allow the constructions of the field. If we capitulate the Tempelhofer Gesetz, or somehow we change the boundaries of action of this law, actually these kind of sub-layers that allows the constructions of the field can arise and coming back into charge. And by modifying this framework, so the layer 1 of the Tempelhofer Gesetz is actually the outcomes of the phase 3 of the Dialogwerkstatt. And the phase 3 of the Dialogwerkstatt is boosted by the idea provided by architects in the idea competitions, the 2 phases idea competition. So what we are doing now in this moment will have actions on maybe the changing of the Tempelhofer Gesetz. And so what are the sub-layers that are making ourselves super risky on this topic is the land use program. The current land use program actually allowed building constructions of the field. If we take a look at the background images under the blue lines, you will see that these pink areas and red areas are actually areas that can be developed as the build-up areas, and with also a high density level of constructions. And all the functions that are inserted in this area are actually the same functions that are listed in the Auslobung. So the functional program listed in the Auslobung is somehow sustained by this current land use program. What is different in the Lobung is that the framework of this land use program can be just limited in the space between the two blue lines. So somehow is the aim of this competition is to shrink the power of the land use program, but somehow there's still a possibility in the back that in the future, if the legislation will not carefully managed, the Tempelhofer Feld can be actually developed even in a wider way than the competition's framework. And by considering this point is actually quite clear that what we are doing in this phase as architects in the process of this big dialogue will have a lot of big influence on the survivance of the Tempelhofer Gesetz. And with that, I think that my colleague Malte will explain you a little bit better which are the point of this big important law.
Hi everyone, thanks that you are here with so many people. So I will briefly go through the Tempelhof law, and for this we asked our colleagues from 100% Tempelhof, thanks you, about the top 10 of the Tempelhof Act, and I read it out now. Next slide. First, protection from development. The field remains permanently undeveloped. Second, protection against sale. The field remains the property of the state of Berlin. Third, protection against commercialization. No commercial use of the field. Fourth, protection of nature and species. The flora and fauna of the field will be protected. 5. Climate protection. The climate regulation effect of the field will be preserved. Local recreation. The field remains a central, easily accessible recreational area. Sports area. Free access for non-club sport is guaranteed. Social space. The field will remain a place for social interaction and experimentation. Historical significance. The field preserves the history of the former Tempelhof Airport, which is both a symbol of the Berlin airlift and a testimony to its use during the Nazi era, when it was used for propaganda and military purposes. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm gonna continue with the part of ecology and landscape. There are, in terms of ecology and landscape management, a lot of laws and guidelines and directives that are actively applied to Tempelhofer Feld. And foremost, it's the Tempelhofer Feld Gesetz, which we just heard about. And there is also the Bundesnaturschutzgesetz, Federal Nature Conservation Act, the Naturschutzgesetz Berlin, but there are also EU birds directives and red lists, Germany, Berlin, who are applying to the Tempelhofer Feld. But I would like to focus on the landscape program today. I'm gonna discuss it a bit later. There are also some other significant documents and strategies and reports, such as the development and maintenance plan, which is also a quite interesting document. I'm also going to talk about that briefly later in the presentation. And here is an overview of all the additional planning materials and documents. So it really is a lot. You can do a deep research on what is happening at Tempelhofer Feld, and all of this is I'm not going to present each one of it. All of this is part of the competition brief, the Auslobungspackage. Berlin. Berlin's green space system consists of 2 rings and 1 cross. So there's the outer ring and the inner park ring. And the Tempelhofer Feld is located within the inner park ring with numerous allotment gardens and parks and green spaces, such as Victoria Park, for example, or Hasenheide, or all the Neukölln cemeteries adjacent to the Tempelhofer Feld. So the Tempelhofer Feld is thus a part of a interconnected green space system, both on a large scale and on a small scale, as you can see here, with green connections to the surrounding areas that can be strengthened and or even newly established to maintain and develop linear biotope connections. I'm going to focus on the landscape program, Landschaftsprogramm. What is the landscape program? The landscape program is a strategic citywide planning tool aimed at implementing environmental precautionary measures, and its goal is to incorporate ecological considerations into urban development, ensuring their implementation and weighing them in a location-specific context. And this Landschaftsprogramm was first established in 1994 and updated in 2016, and there is a revising process. There was a revising process in 2021. And it also applies at Tempelhofer Feld. And this program outlines requirements and measures for achieving goals and principles of nature conservation and landscape management. And all these goals are based on the objectives of paragraph 1 of the Federal Nature Conservation Act, Bundesnaturschutzgesetz. This landscape program is divided into 5 chapters, as you can see here: natural balance and environmental protection, biotope and species protection, recreational use, landscape appearance, and urban compensation concept. And I'm gonna flip through these 5 chapters quickly. So the first one, natural balance and environmental protection. It is about the designation of precautionary areas to preserve natural goods and natural resources, and ensuring precautionary actions to protect animals, plants, biological diversity, humans, and their health. These protected resources encompass climate, water, air, soil, and vegetation. And looking at those 5 elements or resources, which measures can be taken in order to preserve or strengthen them. Tempelhofer Feld is a huge area where rainwater can be collected, retained, infiltrated, and reused. So the natural water balance and groundwater recharge should be maintained there. Also, an adequate water supply should be secured. As you can see on this map, Tempelhofer Feld is a cold air effective area with a very high cold air volume flow, especially during night. Building on Tempelhofer Feld, even building at the edges, would demolish this function, which is super important for the whole city area. So it's about removing barriers, or not even allowing barriers that prevent cold air drainage, and also avoiding pollutant emissions in cold air formation areas. Tempelhofer Feld is a very special area of hot and dry biotopes. So when planting, it should be plants which are climate adapted plants, preferably heat and drought resistant species. Also, open spaces should be preserved and vegetation cover increased. The soil at Tempelhofer Feld is protected by the soil protection law and falls into the category of high soil protection, which you can see here in red. That means avoiding and minimizing adverse effects on the natural soil functions and archive functions of the soil, preventive soil protection during construction projects, which also include soil supervision where it's necessary, prevention of soil compaction, professional removal, storage, and reinstatement of topsoil and subsoil, and also minimizing groundwater drawdown. And last but not least, the Tempelhofer Feld has an immense value on a city's climate, and in order to support its positive effects, we should, and these are quite general steps, preserve the climate effective open spaces and increase the proportion of vegetation, ensure and improve air exchange, and avoid or compensate soil sealing. Okay, let's go to chapter 2, biotope and species protection. This aims to preserve and develop the habitats and occurrences of animal and plant species. Nearly the entire area of Tempelhofer Feld constitutes a protected site for biotope networks, featuring significant dry grassland biotopes and also a ton of red-listed species, bird species, and also plant species. General measures to take are, for example, preserving the biotic diversity, which is exceptionally high at Tempelhofer Feld, creating additional habitats for flora and fauna, extensifying maintenance in parts of the green spaces and parks instead of intensifying it, and compensating for intensification of use, for example, by depaving. This is a map of the nature conservation monitoring. So there is a monitoring every every 5 years. So the most recent is from 2021. And what you can see on this map is that there is a great variety of different species on the Tempelhofer Feld, which were identified and put into that map. And what you can see on that map, for example, is that in the northern part of Tempelhofer Feld, there are a lot of different bird species nesting. Also, you can see the same thing in the southeastern part. What's quite special about Tempelhofer Feld is that it's a very vast area with an extensive use, with a structural diversity and a large-scale low disturbance level over super large areas. So it has a very high importance for species protections due to its size and the many open, dry, and warm habitats, which are very very rare biotopes in a city like Berlin. For example, there's 9 hectares of sandy and dry grasslands, which are protected by Bundesnaturschutzgesetz, and 40 hectares of species-rich fresh meadows, which you can see here in green color, and those are also protected by Naturschutzgesetz Berlin. It's also, as already mentioned, home to endangered plants and birds and light and heat-loving animals and many strictly protected species. Here in this map, for example, you can see the map of the skylark, Feldlerche in German, and actually 50% of the total population, of the total Berlin population of this bird is at Tempelhofer Feld. So it's half of the whole population of the city of Berlin. But there are 26 breeding birds, species of breeding birds, 100 species of wild bees, 21 species of butterflies, and I could go on and on and on. And last but not least, there are sheeps. The sheeps are part of the maintenance program, so it's not natural fauna there, but there are also actors at the Tempelhofer Feld. There's also a quite diverse tree population at the Tempelhofer Feld, so it's about 1,500 trees representing 26 different species, As you can see here, most of the trees are located in the northern part of the Tempelhofer Feld and also at the edges, which is also an argument why not to build at the edges, with an age structure ranging from new planted trees to even 100-year-old trees. Also, there's a great variety of fruit trees there, and the inner part of the Tempelhofer Feld should be kept free of trees, more or less, of new tree plantings to protect these special dry and grassland biotopes, but it should be considered to plant new trees in order to provide shade for recreational areas, and if so, it should be preferably native species, including fruit trees. Chapter 3 is the recreational use. So there the focus is on the protection of people and human health and the preservation of landscape areas as places of experience and recreation for the population. The Tempelhofer Feld is in its greatest parts depicted as a green space or a park. Connected to Volkspark Hasenheide, which you can see here, and the adjacent open spaces in the surrounding areas. The residential areas to the north and the east are characterized by very high density of building and are classified under the high to highest priority levels for improving open space accessibility as distance from Tempelhofer Feld increases. So as you can see here, the yellow parts of the residential areas are well supplied, and the dark parts, the purple parts, the pink parts are not well supplied. So even for those parts, or especially for those parts, the Tempelhofer Feld is super important as an accessible open space. Fourth, the landscape appearance. And the landscape appearance is understood as preservation and development of spatial and experiential qualities and characteristics in terms of Tempelhofer Feld. That means the preservation and development of site-specific characteristics and historic elements, also to be able to experience the history of the site, such as airport runways, light signals, hangars, or other airport structures. The preservation and development of prominent landscape and green structures, such as the characteristic meadows and fallow grasslands. The preserving the experience of space, the vastness of space, the panoramic views, the viewing access, which is absolutely unique and outstanding in the context of this densely built city. And preserving the view on landmarks and the city silhouette. As you can see here, for example, you can even see the Fernsehturm at Alexanderplatz or the radar tower, but you can also see a close by mosque. You can see the gasometer in Schöneberg and many more. And last but not least, the urban compensation concept, das gesamtstädtische Ausgleichskonzept. And this is a supplement to the landscape program, which shows suitable areas for compensation and replacement measures. And for example, the southern part of Tempelhofer Feld is designated as a potential area for priority spaces and measures. And this compensation concept means that new green spaces in the inner and outer park ring should be complemented. Existing green spaces should be developed and enhanced, and the quality of stay should be improved. So this is what the landscape program is about, summed up, and there are a lot of maps and research results to look at. And last but not least, I would like to say a few more sentences to maintenance and park management. which is also quite an important part of the Tempelhofer Feld, because there is a well-functioning system of maintenance and park management. Since 2008, Grün Berlin is responsible for the park management. Grün Berlin is a state-owned company, and it coordinates the maintenance and development of the field together with the Senate, Department of Urban Development, Building and Environment, as well as citizens. And since 2016, there is the field coordination, Feldkoordination, and this field coordination has been established as a committee responsible for the development of Tempelhofer Feld as a public green space. It consists of 7 elected citizens and 4 members of the administration, and this project management team oversees the planning and implementation of qualifying measurements and measures, which are defined within the development and maintenance plan. This is also a very interesting document, which is also part of the Auslobungspaket and which can be which you can also find there and read. The development team, the maintenance team is responsible, for example, for the overall management and maintenance and care and repair of the area of all the buildings, for the green spaces and the paths and sport fields. It's responsible for visitor services, for rental and leasing. There are also educational and mediation offers, and they also are responsible for the support for civic projects. Okay, that's it more or less. The last thing I would like to share with you is our Miro board. I'm gonna stop my screen for a moment and going to show you our board. Just a second. Can you see it? Yeah, so we decided that we would like to share our board with all of you, where we shared all our research. Where we compiled all our research findings and notes and plans and maps and links and sources. So you're very welcome to take a look at it, and the link will be shared in the Telegram group later.
Okay, thank you so much, all of you. That was a great orientation guide. And also the resources are still available on the Miro. So next up, Josh again, who's going to talk a little bit about overall the framing of our collaboration.
Okay, so we're getting to the part where all of you get to do something. Talking about how we can all work together. And before we get into some details, just want to have a little reminder about our overall goal here. What the current government of Berlin wants to do is they want to tell this story. They want to create a narrative with the ideas competition. So the ideas competition is not just about creating a lot of nice ideas for the Feld. For them, it's also kind of about trying to say, look, architects and planners want to do all these things to the Feld. Architects and planners want to build on the Feld. But the purpose of Architects for Tempelhof is to create a counter narrative to that. So we are going to create this narrative through what we do, which is that architects and planners are against building on Tempelhofer Feld. And over the coming months, we are going to spread this narrative as far and wide as we can, from the Süddeutsche Zeitung to the New York Times and all the architect spaces. One fun thing is a couple of us, this has happened twice already in the last couple of weeks. People in our group have overheard on the subway in Berlin on the U-Bahn. I've heard people talking about Architects for Tempelhof. So within all of the architecture community, we're going to try to rally everyone and make it known that we are not or building on Tempelhofer Feld. And the way we're going to create this narrative is getting as many of us together as we can. We're going to mobilize against the competition in a few different ways, which we'll talk about in a minute. And we're going to give our reasons why, and we're going to show how not to build on Tempelhofer Feld. This is the outlook for the next few months. So right now, we're all the way on the left side in phase 1 of the competition. This wraps up in the middle of January. We think it's intentional that the Senat chose this time over the holidays really fast so that there's as little participation as possible. So we have to kind of react and try to put as much energy as we can towards getting some submissions there, because we think that having some serious submissions is strategic probably. And then after this really hard stop, you can kind of see there's a few key dates which we might be able to plan some things around. And we're going to talk about this stuff more as time moves forward, probably focusing more on this after January 15. But for now, we needed some ways to communicate directly and collaborate. And so that's why we have started a Telegram. So I think someone might drop a link to this in the chat as well, but you can take a photo of this with your phone and get on Telegram. I wanted to give a little overview of the sub-channels there, because in addition to just like the general channel, which is just kind of like for everything, we're going to have a channel just for asking questions about the competition. So people can ask questions. If you see something there that you know the answer to, you can go ahead and answer directly. We're trying to open it up so it's not just us in the core group telling everything. It's kind of like, you know, everyone can work together directly. Another sub-channel is going to be matchmaking, which I'll talk about more in a minute. And then we're going to have dedicated channels for some of the other actions going forward, such as doing protest submissions, raising awareness and mobilizing, and the exhibition. So that'll kind of come into play after January, like I mentioned. And then just an off-topic one, if you have other initiatives or other events outside of Tempelhof that you think would be interesting for people here, you can feel free to drop those there. So yeah, hopefully everybody got a chance to take a photo. Hold on for one more second. Which brings us to the matchmaking portion. So the thinking around this is there's a bunch of us, there's over 100 of us on the call right now, and more people in our network. Our email list now is about 600 people. So some of us have come to this sort of ready to create things for the competition, and we already might have our little architecture studios or collectives that we're in a unit with. And some of us might be just sort of hanging out, and we sort of have the idea that people might be looking to collaborate. So the purpose with matchmaking is to try to facilitate people finding other groups that might be able to work together, because like I said, the number one thing is we want to get as many people as possible engaging with this competition and engaging with our alternative actions coming afterwards. Yeah, we're gonna have this channel on Telegram where you can basically say, I can do this, but I'm looking for someone who can do that. Or you could say, you know, I'm in office in this location, but we want to collaborate with someone in Berlin or in Germany who has a little more local context. Or someone might have licensure in Germany and might be able to partner with someone else outside of Germany, and they can make something together and use that stamp. So there's a lot of different cases, and we're just gonna kind of let you pitch yourself. And on that note, we wanted to have a little demo of this as well. Oh, one more thing, because I'm a landscape architect, and landscape architecture is going to be really important for this competition. We're still in the minority in the group here in terms of like the 600 people. So this isn't really surprising, but I just wanted to put a little pitch out there that if you're a landscape architect on this call, if we all find one more landscape architect to bring to this who might want to participate, then we will double the number of landscape architects, and that would be really something, wouldn't it? So that's my call to you. Yeah, Fanny is also a landscape architect. And so with that, we have some landscape architects here in the call from the US forward, and they are going to present a little pitch here about collaboration partners they're looking for. So if Devin and Ellen want to unmute, you should be able to introduce yourselves.
Thanks so much, Josh. And thank you everyone for having us. So as you mentioned, yes, Devin and I are both landscape architects. I'm based in New York and registered as a landscape architect here, and Devin's based in Oakland, California, and registered in California. And we got to talking with Josh after our last call and put together this little one-pager to just sort of put out an idea to see if anyone would be interested in collaborating with us. I won't read this all to you. You can all read it on your own, but I guess the highlights are that, so we're a worker-owned landscape architecture, public art, and urban design cooperative. And we're focused on building culturally specific and resilient projects alongside collaborators to reveal complex histories and ecologies in the built environment. And our projects really focus on this idea of co-design, specifically with like local neighbors. We try to do a lot of work with community land trusts, which I'm not as familiar with how common that is in Europe, but it's pretty rare in the US. So it's something that feels like quite like an uphill battle at times. And so it's really important that we sort of bring this aspect of democracy into our practice. And so with our initial project idea for the Tempelhofer Feld, our idea was to propose a democratic process as the design proposal rather than a resolved idea or concept, to really center co-designing with the community groups and activists and neighbors and everyone who's done so much work on this project already, to really center all of that and uphold that, rather than sort of coming in with something that's new or out of context, and certainly not anything that would propose any new buildings, but rather this idea of developing a framework with community engagement, that being sort of like the design proposal itself. So you know, we started to brainstorm what a list of deliverables could include, like if it's a series of images or collages that start with the work that's done in the dialogue workshops, so that we're showing sort of the examples of engagement work that could result from democratic process. It could also look like just letters of commitment from community organizers or support groups, and an outline of the democratic process or framework. And so we're really looking for a collaborator or several collaborators who are EU-based, either architects, urban designers, planners, other landscape architects, and have knowledge of the local governance processes and local politics. Because we really see ourselves as sort of upholding this democratic process and familiar with community engagement, but would obviously want that local expertise and familiarity. And so we're really looking for people who see themselves as facilitators to build a consensual decision-making process. And on the bottom of that sheet, it looks like it got cut off, but I can also drop it in the chat, our contact information. So Josh listed our website there, but I can also share our emails and Instagram and things like that. But yeah, thank you so much for inviting us to participate.
Great, thank you, Ellen. That was great. So yeah, with this, I just kind of want to give an idea of what some of you might want to do if you can step forward, present an idea that's ready for collaboration. The timeline is pretty quick here. We have about 6 weeks until the first phase deadline. So yeah, go get in Telegram, get in the matchmaking channel, introduce yourselves, and I think we'll additionally drop this one pager in that channel as well, so you guys can get in touch. And yeah, I also think this concept is just an interesting idea for it's an example of a creative way to approach the question of how to not build, and to give something to the competition that also kind of works against the competition. So I hope that was thought-provoking as well. And with that, I think I'll give it back to Vika so we can go into some breakout groups and brainstorming.
Yes, thank you so much. And thanks for joining us from New York and pitching some ideas. It's always nice also to have some outside perspectives when you're having kind of this very local dialogue, and sort of also see, what people from outside can kind of bring and see it with fresh eyes. So next up, we have Jolene, who's going to explain or sort of break down different ways to contribute. And then we'll all get thrown into breakout rooms and come back after that and report back from the rooms what kind of the findings are. So make sure when you're in those breakout rooms to nominate one person that can sort of report back to the larger team about what has been discussed in the room. But with that, I give it to Jolene to explain the different options, and you can kind of choose which breakout room you want to join by joining the poll. All right, Jolene.
Yeah, exactly. So I think now I will pull up the poll in a minute. I just wanted to explain what it means further for those who are not super clear about it or weren't at the first assembly. It's kind of a repeat of the second poll we had there on how not to build. And this time is similar. It's just called which strategy brainstorm you would like to contribute to. And we will split into 4 different groups. The last time we had the highest vote for joining the competition with a protest or statement, and the runner-up to that is to join with a genuine proposal. So I suspect that these 2 will be the larger groups, but we also have 2 other options. So the very first one is to not participate in the competition and to raise awareness. I think whether if you are not eligible or feel like your strength and interest lies in raising awareness, then this group is for you. The second one is participating in a competition with a genuine THF law conform proposal. For example, Devin and Ellen, who is just presented. So I assume that this is something that this group, you would like to join this group, whether you're a licensed planner from EU, UK, US, or Japan, or you would like to find a partner, you can join this group. The third one is participating in a competition with a protest or statement. This is more of like that you join the competition, you actually go through all of the paperwork and the hurdles, but it's not per se to put in a proposal of what should not be built there. Maybe it's a bit difficult for architects to suggest how not to build, but instead you could make a protest. I don't know, like let's say you have a similar, like a green background saying that this field should remain as a field, or a black background that says do not build, or just many words and other ways to say you don't support this and you don't want to build. This is what we mean as a protest statement, but you will still need to be an eligible license planner in order to submit this. And the very last one is the self-organized alternative open exhibition. And this is more looking towards after the first phase deadline, and considering our diverse background here as a group, we could host an exhibition collecting the work of everyone. It could also be more of an alternative way of presenting, not only in these A0 posters or double A0 posters, but in other forms like sound recordings, artworks, etc. So I'm going to pull up the poll now and launch it. So whichever one you choose will place you in a breakout room after, just letting you know about this. And while you're voting for it, I think through our discussion with the 100% Tempelhofer Feld group, they are strongly recommending for all of those who can to join and submit a genuine proposal, so that the jury have an alternative where they can choose from. Actually, if there's only, I don't know, if all the entries are about buildings, how can the juries also exercise their thoughts? Let's put it that way. And yeah, it's also fine if you are just interested to kind of discuss a certain topic, but you are going to submit a protest, but you want to discuss the exhibition, then of course you can also join the exhibition group. I think this is totally fine. And in this brainstorm, we will also have we have a Miro board prepared that you can just use and share and use this Post-its. And from there, as Mika mentioned, I think when you discuss with the group, maybe nominate somebody who will report shortly back what is the highlights of your discussion. I think this will be very interesting for all of us. And I'm kind of letting the poll run because it's only 55% participating. So let's run it for another 30 seconds. And I'm not really sure technically what will happen if you did not vote for one. Oh, you don't see the poll. If you don't see the poll, it could be hidden somewhere behind your many windows. That could be one option. Or if you see a tab kind of below where you have like audio, video, etc., that could be a poll to bring it back. Because if you voted for something and it went away, you can kind of bring it back. Yeah, but I was saying, like, technically, I don't know what happens if you're not, if you did not answer the poll. I think you will remain in the main room, but we can also put you into a room that you prefer. I think this would work as well. Okay, we're actually now 77%. Perhaps we can go ahead and break out into these rooms. We have we have 20 minutes. Maybe Bika can give us a last 5 minutes heads up when we're approaching to that.
Well, I think we have more like 15 max, because otherwise,
Max?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So 15 minutes per group, because otherwise we're not going to finish at 8, and we should definitely try to keep on time. So try to be kind of brief with the discussion, and I'm gonna maybe send in the chat like when we have like 3 more minutes, so you can kind of wrap up and try to summarize. Cool. All right. See you in the room. Everyone, welcome back. All right. Maybe the first, what about the people who are, let's start with the exhibition group. Who was in the exhibition group from our team? Or is there somebody else who wants to facilitate?
I was there, but maybe Sylvia, if you would like to say a few words, or is she a bit frozen at the moment? Oh, there she is. She's back.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So actually, I just remember that I have this hat. It's from the Temple Garden. So I think there was yeah, and if the background is too loud, I'm really sorry. I can mute myself again. But I think the general idea was to navigate the exhibition design or potential, let's say, happening, to direct it also towards wider public and more people, not in a form of like necessarily education, not to be patronizing, because there was a good mention about like just open dialogue, but to create this kind of maybe on the outskirts of Tempelhofer Feld, to create a series of intervention that would respond to either maybe the laws or some other ideas that have been discussed in assembly that are kind of abstract. So to generate almost like tangible outcomes, tangible objects or happenings or micro events, especially that it's in summer. So first of all, people would get to know Tempelhofer Feld better. And as an example, a family or a passerby or a walk, or this person who just goes for a walk then every now and then, or maybe a tourist, they start to understand how important this place and this space is. And also then to bring people together potentially, and not potentially, but to bring people together and potentially create some sort of collective memory of Tempelhofer Feld itself. So yeah, how does it feel like to be there? How amazing it is for micro communities that already thrive, like skaters, skateboarders, beekeepers, people who bird watch, so bird watchers. I don't know, also, yeah, having this place as a summer.
I'm going to cut you off because we have to still get to all the groups. So let's keep it to 1 minute summary. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, no, you can just finish your sentence. Just wanted to be mindful.
No, I'm a chat. I can talk. Seriously, you have to stop me.
Okay,
thanks.
But sounds great. Thank you so much. And I'm curious also to hear more, and maybe we can kind of sum up these slightly more extensively on Instagram and even on an email. So let's see about the exact formats. So Malte, do you want to speak about participating with a protest statement, or somebody from your group?
Yes, Katharina wants to say something.
Awesome.
Hi, I'll try to make it short. Of course, we don't have any solutions. We have discussed 3 options. First one is, what if we try to make it to the second round deliberately, and maybe then try to use that money to fund some other activities, which we are still not sure of if that's the smartest solution. Then we moved on to the second one, that is more in the direction of creating different types of alternative solutions that we know that are not going to pass to the second round, that are going to have some connecting points. That would involve some designing on our side, but on the exhibition that would have a strong statement of like collective alternative solutions that are saying no to building. The third way of protesting is a bit more radical way, where we say that we produce all together collectively one solution that doesn't have to be even drawing, that we kind of give out to whoever has a stamp and is interested in submitting. In that case, we could produce many same solutions, where our presence with this disqualified solution and the mere number of it could be the protest statement.
Perfect.
Well, of course, we haven't made any decision. We were just discussing that.
Yeah, but that's already a rich set of ideas. And then, so the group of the not participating in a competition and raising awareness group, who was, I think Josh was in the room.
Yeah, Teresa, since your camera's on, do you want to give any thoughts? Or if you don't want to, I can also.
You can do it better, I think.
Okay. Teresa's in Tempelhofer 100%. So, yes, we talked first just about like a lot of our thoughts and our feelings, which I think is really interesting because it could go into content that we make or posters or protests or anything. Someone mentioned that they were really angry that this is even happening, which I think is something that a lot of people can relate to. And I think it's good to use those emotions in this situation. Someone also mentioned how Brun Berlin in the current budget proposal had 50% of their budget cut. And meanwhile, millions of euros are going for this competition. So there's kind of like these connecting issues and threats to open space that's happening with the current government that we can also bring awareness to. So yeah, these are just a bunch of random thoughts. Yeah, I think yeah, that's good.
That's great for now. Thanks, Josh. All right, and then from the participating in competition with a genuine Tempelhofer law conform proposal. So maybe we went through a little bit of a kind of introduction of each member, and then there were a lot of people who are international but are currently based in Berlin, which is interesting, and then some people who are in the US and Croatia. I don't know if somebody wants to try to sum up, maybe Alan or Connor, if you feel like trying to say something. Otherwise, I'm happy also to just speak very briefly. Yeah, basically we were talking a little bit about, how to kind of, on one hand, keep the Tempelhofer Feld and its poetry and its qualities, and what we as designers can contribute, and sort of that tension between, on one hand, the kind of already existing democratic processes that are endangered in some sense now, and how as designers we can in a way work with these but still have an agency and sort of think through areas of expertise that we can bring in to the field that go beyond sort of like political. Yeah, that's how I would sum it up. But if anybody else wants to add, otherwise I would move on to
I'll just add quickly as well that
yes,
which I haven't heard discussed much here, which is the potential of, I guess, like researching alternative sites and then considering like a proposal or a development on Tempelhof as sort of symbolic, but still maybe like a landscape or something. But for the most part, is researching alternate sites and then submitting that as a legitimate proposal that could potentially be used maybe like as evidence that we looked at alternatives and there actually was one, but still sort of meeting the criteria of a legitimate proposal by proposing housing and commercial buildings elsewhere, and then a landscape, maybe like a few trees and like a park bench or something. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing. And then, yeah, I would give the final word to Josh, who's going to talk a little bit about the next steps, our next assembly, and so on. So thanks everyone so much for taking part in the groups.
Yeah, thank you. Just reiterating some of the to-dos here. So see you all in Telegram. You can always write us for the link and Instagram or email or whatever if you want to invite more people. So yeah, get on there, start talking to people about. I heard a lot of interesting ideas that I think we should definitely discuss more. So hopefully we can do that there soon. In about a week or maybe a little longer, we're going to have an open letter that you all should sign and spread it through your networks, so we can get thousands of signatures there. And then the next assembly, we think that probably until this January deadline, people are going to be really busy right after the holidays. So we were guessing that we might want to just meet right after January 15th and start discussing ideas like the alternative exhibition, but also interested to hear your thoughts. If you want to have a call together on Zoom at some point, can certainly discuss it, but TBD. And any other ways you want support, would also be interested to hear that as well through all those same channels. So thank you all so much for joining the call. It's great to have all this energy and ideas, and we're excited for what comes next. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, and see you on the Telegram channel where we can keep chatting. Thank you. Bye.